Brilliant. So we've got Abbie and Jonathan here today, and my name's Mark Hancock. I guess I just want to sort of introduce a little bit about what we've been doing, but give a little bit about my particular story, and then I'll ask Abbie and Jonathan to do the same. So for me, I was diagnosed type 2 diabetic in 2010. Realistically, I probably had diabetes for a good couple of years before that, at least. I'd had a few symptoms, other bits and pieces, but I just sort of parked them to one side, really. I didn't really think they were that significant. And I found out, I had a nurse who come around to see me because we were sorting out some life assurance, and I found out that I had too much sugar in my blood. And of course, she told me to go and see the GP and have tests and other bits and pieces. And long and short of it is that I, got diagnosed with type 2. And it was, I remember feeling at the time how, I mean, it's pretty devastating, really, when you get that news. And then, of course, the first thing you do is you look online, you look at all these horrible things that are potentially going to happen to you in the future, and there seems to be very little that you can do about it. But I remember also having a bit of an issue with food as well at the time. I think I was so confused about the food. But there was a nurse, lovely nurse at my doctor's, and my wife and I went along to see her, and she talked about the types of foods that we should be eating, and she looked really at what we now call the Eat Well Guide or the Eat Well Plate, and to base meals around that. Initially I lost some weight because I obviously was carrying quite a bit of weight at that time. I also took up some running, and I couldn't believe that because I never run before in my life, and suddenly here I was able to do little races and get involved in things like park run and that type of thing. But the concern for me was that my blood sugar started to go back up again, and my weight was starting to go back up again, and they were threatening to put me on more medication than had already been put on since day one. And to me, that was pretty devastating because I was doing everything I was supposed to do. I was doing all my exercise, I was following the Eat Well Plate, and yet the disease was chronic and progressive. So I'd always thought, that's what I'd always been told. And the years went by. I remember in 2016, they were looking at putting my medication up because they said, you've done really well to get to this point, but we did tell you it was going to get worse. And it was only by luck that I heard the TV doctor, Michael Mosley, on the radio, and he said that perhaps we were treating type 2 diabetics in the wrong way, and that we were promoting the types of foods that actually would harm them rather than heal them. And it didn't have to be a chronic and progressive disease. It could be something that could be reversed or put into remission. And to me, that was something fantastic to get that kind of information, to be able to have some sort of goal. Where I was all over that, and I bought his book. I started following it, and it was jaw-dropping because I was able to eat foods that I'd been told that I shouldn't be eating, and cut some of the things that I've been told that I should be eating, which were things like basmati rice and pasta and bread and these other wholemeal breads and things like that, which I suddenly learned that actually they were doing more harm than good, and they were actually making my disease more progressive. So I did it, and I was astounded by how quickly the changes happened and how the weight was falling off me. I didn't feel hungry, and my blood sugars returned back into the normal range, and my medication all stopped. And that all really happened ever so quickly. And here I am 4 years later, and I'm still there. I still weigh the same. I still enjoy doing my running. But I don't have those high blood sugars anymore, and I have absolutely no medication. And for me, that's given me a future. It's an opportunity to see my kids grow older and watch them have kids. And so for me, the big thing was I wanted to shout it from the rooftops. And I wanted to try and help people. And I was really fortunate to hook up with some local GP surgeries. And they have put this together, which is absolutely wonderful from my point of view. And they've asked me to come along and get involved. And this is a way of, I guess, using my experience of being able to put what we call a low carb diet into practice, and help other patients who are just at the beginning of that journey. And we meet every week, and we're doing it all on Zoom because that's what we deal with these days, and we can't meet up personally at this moment in time. But it gives us the opportunity to see how we're doing on a week-to-week basis, and help each other and hold each other's hands to get through this and potentially come out a far healthier person than we could ever have dreamed possible. So yes, I could have asked lots of nurses into this little room that we've recorded, and lots of patients, because we are doing this with quite a few. But I really would love you to hear from Abbie and Jonathan, because I think it's really interesting from a diabetic point of view or from a patient's point of view. And why would they want to be doing this? Why is this important? Why was this important to them at this moment in time? So perhaps I can hand over to Abbie, who can introduce herself and perhaps tell us a little bit about her.
Hello, I'm Abbie. I've had type 2 diabetes for 17 years. Was told at the very beginning that it was I would never not be diabetic, and that's a progressive disease, and that's what it proved to be. To the point 7 years ago, I was having 2 or 3 tablets and background insulin 7 years ago, and it just got worse and worse, really. And then last November 2019, I'd got really, really bad results. My HbA1c was 74, and my cholesterol was 9.1. I was on 72 units of background taken at night, 1 glycoside, a metformin 3 times a day, and a linagliptin, and 5 milligram of ramipril. And I decided that I'd hit the buffers. And as luck would have it, I saw a clip in a newspaper about reversing diabetes and how not eating carbohydrates was a key. So I vowed after Christmas that I was going to absolutely slam into it. So on the 6th of December, that's what I did. I stopped eating rice, potatoes, pasta, cereals, any carbohydrates, and just had healthy meats, fish, vegetables, and other alternatives like not sweet potato, butternut squash and celeriac, and played with all those things. And I'd lost 1.5 stone by about, I think it was about the 7th or 8th of March 2020. And I had some more blood tests done, and I thought that they were good because I've been testing my sugars, and they were low to such an extent that they were dangerously low sometimes. So I'd already taken myself off my glycoside, and I'd started to lower the insulin dosage. And this was before I'd been to see my doctor, really, or my diabetic nurse. I just did it myself. So when I did have this HbA1c, I was absolutely flabbergasted in just those few months to have gone down to 57, which just brings me into the normal range for a diabetic. My cholesterol had gone to 4.45. I was down to 60 units of insulin from 72 at that point. And I'd dropped the glycoside, and I'd also dropped the ramipril to 2.5 for my blood pressure because that was going a little bit low. And at that point, I'd obviously made contact with my diabetic nurse at my practice, who told me these results, and she was as delighted as me. And I was absolutely flabbergasted to the point of tears, because I just couldn't believe that after 17 years of just having given all sorts of different types of medication, some that didn't work, so they'll take that away and you'll give something else. Here I am on my own. I just cut out carbohydrates, and it had done it. So then once I got to know, Paula had realised what I'd done, my diabetic nurse, she said that there was a new Zoom meeting that was going to be taking place with some other practice nurses and Mark Hancock as well. And would I like to be involved in that? And I leapt at the chance of it. And that's when I learned that the low carb is key, but also high fat is equally as important. And I was also helped with the teams to bring my insulin down even further to this point now, which I think is about I don't know, 6 weeks on from when I first got those results. I'm now down to 15 units of insulin, and I was 72 in January. So it's just phenomenal. And my goal now is to be a non-insulin user. And also, I've just lost 29 pounds since that time as well. And remarkably, even eating fat, I've lost half a stone eating fat. I've been having butter on my vegetables. I've been cooking fish in butter. I've been having cream in coffee and cream over my strawberries and full fat Greek yogurt and nuts. And the diet is amazing. I never thought that I would ever get off of carbohydrates, having toast in the morning or the odd cake and the things, and pasta and potatoes. But in actual fact, I do not miss it at all. It's like a switch has been switched on in my brain. I don't feel hungry. I feel totally satisfied. I can go have scrambled eggs in the morning at, say, 8 o'clock, and it could be 2 in the afternoon before I'm even thinking I might eat something for lunch. And then it might be not because I'm starving. And it's just mind-blowingly astounding. I just couldn't have believed in my wildest dreams that I could switch things around and feel so differently about food in 5 short months. My journey's not ended. I won't give up on this. And in actual fact, I have no desire whatsoever to change how I'm eating, because it's the most enjoyable and very, very easy. It's loads of fish with creamy sauces and vegetables soaked in, well, not soaked in butter. I'm being careful with the fats, but I'm just having what gives me pleasure and enjoyment. And because you're not starving and you're not ravenous for things, you don't overindulge in any of it. So from my point of view, this has been an absolutely miraculous journey. And if I'd have known this 5 years ago, I wouldn't be where I am today. I know I would probably be non-diabetic. And if this helps anybody, especially new diabetics, that the shock of being told you're a diabetic, thinking, oh, my life's never going to be the same. Yes, it can be. You've just got to follow this low carb, high fat diet, listen to your professionals, and you'll turn it around in months, especially if you've not had you've only just been diagnosed. But here's me, 17 years I've been a diabetic, and I've done it very quickly. So, and I'm hearing lots and lots of stories now. And now I'm on this journey and hearing more. I'm hearing these stories all over the place, but they've just not been there for me before. So things like this video are going to perhaps, hopefully, help.
Okay, so just picking up on that. So, Abbie, you said how life-changing it's been for you.
Absolutely.
I mean, do you feel this is something you could just do on your own, or do you see that there's a real benefit in what the local GP surgeries and diabetic nurses are doing here, where we're trying to promote this free service really over a 6-week period? Do you see that as a benefit to you? Does that help in your planning?
Yeah, I think it does help, because I did do it initially on my own, but I was just cutting carbs, and that was just my basic way of looking at it, and it was successful, obviously. But since I've been in with the group, and obviously all the diabetic nurses and yourself, it's introduced me into the fasting that I might be taking up, and skipping a breakfast, and it's different recipe ideas that people put through, the encouragement of coming down the insulin. I was a bit scared to keep taking it away, but I was encouraged to do so. So yeah, no, I think it does help to have the professionals on board. And also, if you're worried about anything, you can actually contact them and say, look, I've got this problem, I've got that, or what do you think about this? And yeah, no, all help is beneficial, isn't it? So
absolutely, and I think you sound very much like me, Abbie, in as much as you kind of want to help other people as well.
yeah,
So once you realise, you know, what it can do for you, and I know Jonathan's very much like he really wants to help spread the message, and I think your story is very powerful, and it'd be interesting to hear it.
Thank
yes.
you.
Well, I needed some life insurance about 12 years ago, and they said, well, you've got to have a medical. So I went to a medical, and to have a medical, my GP got results, and he came back to me and said, well, you know, everything looks pretty good, but your sugar's a bit high. He said, I think you're a bit sugar intolerant, and it was about 9.3, I think, as I remember. And so I thought, well, that's an issue, pre-diabetic effectively. So over the ensuing years, I was diagnosed as having diabetes type 2. And of course, it's a bit of a blow, and you start to read all the issues about type 2 diabetes, you know, potential damage to your sight, even loss of sight. I mean, one of my customers wasn't controlled, completely lost his sight. Damage to your nerve endings, your feet and your fingers. It's frankly frightening. So I was put on medication. I was put on glycoside, and the blood sugars weren't really coming down, so I went from 1 glyc to 2, and eventually to 3 glycosides, metformin, some linagliptin. I was just getting medicated more and more. Fast moving forwards, I went to have an HbA1c blood test, long-term blood test, with my diabetic nurse. And she showed me the graph, and she said, look, Jonathan, I have to tell you that your sugar is just not under control. And it kind of depressed me, and I thought, yeah, I've probably been a bit naughty, and you know, and I've had what I shouldn't have, and I kind of like chocolate and things like that. And she said, well, look, don't despair. Let me show you something that just came in today. And I said, okay. So she put up on screen a chart that was developed by Dr. David Unwin, who's a GP in a surgery in Southport near Liverpool. And when one talks about grams of carbohydrate, it doesn't actually register very much because it's a number. And you know what they say, one picture is worth 1,000 words. And this chart, which was called infographics, and you need to have a look at that because it's shocking, actually. Every foodstuff is described in a pictorial form in terms of heaped spoonfuls of sugar. And when I saw that an average portion of rice was the equivalent to 10 spoons of sugar, and potatoes were equivalent, I think, to 9, and even a banana was equivalent to 6 spoons of sugar, I could tell you that it wasn't a light bulb moment. It was a flash of lightning, complete with a thunder. I was absolutely bowled over, and it was stunning. It just stunned me. And so I said to my particular Paula, listen, if that's what these foodstuffs represent, I'm on board this train. That was 8 weeks ago. I'm 71 years old, and I thought type 2 was me for life, and I just have to make sure that I try and preserve my sight and, you know, have my feet checked from time to time. But I could tell you that since then, I've gone into this low carbohydrate diet, and I've lost practically a stone in weight. I've gone down from 1412 to 1312, 1312 and 1/4 actually, I think it was last check. My blood pressure, and my cardiologist has yet to hear this, my blood pressure dropped from an average of about 145 over 85 to between 115 and 120 over 70 to 75. My sugar has come down. I'm now completely off glycoside. At the moment, I'm still on metformin and linagliptin. I'm looking down. I mean, I've only been on this 8 weeks. I mean, people have been on this diet for 18 months or more. I'm determined that I'm going to put my diabetes into remission. The other great thing is I've got bags of energy. I mean, if I could hardly, trot 50 meters, now I'm running 2 to 3 kilometers a day. And at the end of the run, I'm sprinting. If you could tell me that I'd be sprinting, I'd have said, well, that's a lie. That could never happen. But it is. And I feel mentally, I feel absolutely on top of the world. And I've got to tell you that my frustration in a way is that there are a lot of medical people out there that still are not on board. They are still bringing out the old adage, low fat, don't eat too much butter, don't eat too much cheese, stick to margarine, eat low fat yogurt. I got to tell you that it's totally wrong. We've been wrong-footed for years, and it's quite interesting. And this has been said many times. If you go back 30 or 40 years, the type 2 diabetes epidemic, which we have at the moment, has gone up about 400 or 500%. That's the people that have been diagnosed, let alone the people that haven't been diagnosed. So it's probably a lot higher. And of course, obesity's got a lot to do with that. All I can say to you is this. You may say, well, everything in moderation, a balanced diet. But I've done a lot of research, and with the help of our great group, I've discovered that actually there's nothing in carbohydrates in terms of minerals and vitamins you cannot get from other foodstuffs. To say that you need your roughage in carbohydrate is just an untruth. It's just not true. So what are the downsides in having a low carb diet? Well, I'll tell you what the downsides are. Nothing. There's no downside at all. I feel great. I've lost weight. Sugar's come down. My blood pressure's come down, and I feel better at 71 than I did at 61. So you might not believe everything. All I can say is do the research. Just research, particularly David Unwin, infographics. Check out low carb diets. See what's being said. This is a train that's gathering steam, I can tell you. And, the likes of Boris Johnson, for example, he came, let's face it, came pretty close to death. And now he's addressing the whole national obesity situation, which is very closely linked with diabetes type 2. We've got the opportunity here of really losing this terrible epidemic. Don't believe me. Do the maths. Look at the data. Check it out. Low carb diets, and above all, try it. Try it for 2 weeks and just see what happens. I promise you, you'll never look back. It's changed my life, and I hope it changes yours.
Oh, fantastic! And that's a brilliant way to I guess bring this to a close, and hopefully we've got some interest, hopefully from patients locally. And I guess I would just implore anyone who's in a situation where they've struggled with their weight or they're battling type 2 diabetes, that they speak to their nurse, because we've got a great team across the area that are really embracing this, and they've seen the benefits, and they can see it happening with their patients, and they can see it with you two, and they can see it with the others in the group as well. And it's fantastic. It's lovely to see. We get together once a week. So please, from my side of things, I would say get in touch with your nurse, contact your GP surgery, and see what it's all about. It may not be for you, but hopefully you'll realize actually this is a really good, healthy way to take control of whatever issue you've got in terms of diabetes. So thank you, Jonathan and Abbie, for your time tonight. It's wonderful seeing your progress, and I really look forward to us getting back together again next week and catching up. So until then, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.